So, welcome to my kitchen, and I just installed this hood. Now, I have this range right here. It's a leave, and it's originally, now it's a Holman's. I guess Holman's bought it out, and it was a bit of a drama to install, but I did it. And I originally bought a matching hood, and they canceled the order. I waited close to a year and then they canceled it. So then I bought a copper, like a nice copper one, and I got it custom made, and they canceled it. So I just went to Home Depot. I was like, we need a hood. There's too many fires in my kitchen that are just flooding the unit, and we need some circulation. So instead of the ugly, we had before those ugly microwaves, and it doesn't really do much with the vent system. So I put in the hood. The air quality is a lot nicer, but it's kind of the ugly silver hood. And as my kitchen's really magical and filled with plate walls and tile detailing, so I decided to do some detail elements. I bought some things from Home Depot. So what I want to do is build a frame and have this go on the top, another trim go on the bottom. These pieces right here do something like this, so it looks like it's holding up and not floating. I think for me, as part of design, I took architecture with design, and I found that a lot of times form and function, like you want the form to show the function and vice versa. I might not be saying it right. It was a while since architecture school. I became a fire dancer and traveled the world in between. So, but basically the principle is that you want it to look structurally sound. So this is like floating, and it's much nicer to look like maybe this is holding it up. Do you see? So this will be the structure. So it looks like it's structurally holding it, as opposed to magically floating, which I guess if something's magically floating, it can give you that sense of awe, but it doesn't give you that sense of comfort, if that makes sense. I think that's what I'm getting at. So I want this to look like it's kind of goes with my cottagey kitchen, and has its place, and it looks like it's doing something and is beautiful. And between the two trims, I'm going to put some tile. So I have no idea what I'm doing on this one. I did Google some and YouTube some tutorials and looked at Pinterest. Nothing is really exactly what I want, so I'm kind of merging everything together. So I hope you take something away from this video and enjoy. I started the framing project by putting a piece of wood in the back. This is going to be doing two things. One, it's going to be anchoring the brass rod I got to hang pots in the back, and it's also going to help with the structure to a degree. I decided to not get rid of the cabinets in the upper part because I really like the tiling detail, and I need the extra storage space. So I have to really be clever with how I'm going to do the structure of the framework around the hood. I had to carve notches in the pieces of wood I'm going to be putting horizontally and underneath the hood. I'm going to put it all around. This will be like a structure for the trim that I'm going to be using. So I'm just screwing that. I first tried to screw it into the actual wood of the cabinets, and there wasn't a lot to hold on to. And I discovered that I can actually screw in, and it does anchor into the actual hood. So that was interesting. I do want to add that I knew exactly where the electrical was in the hood and where all the mechanical pieces were, because to assemble the hood, you actually have to take it apart to a degree. So it was all kind of located in the center or in the back. So there was no electrical on the sides when I was screwing into the actual hood. So I knew that there was nothing there. It was just steel and space. Once I finished the wood structure, the horizontal pieces, I put in these, I think they're meant for like shelf anchors. I got them at Home Depot. They have a metal piece that's meant to put on a nail or a screw that's already in the wall. So I'm not using them for, I think, their intended purpose, but I like where I'm putting them. I just picked them up at Home Depot, and they were a little bit pricey, about $50, but I think they'll add that big anchorage and make this thing look like a nook and go for a feel that I really want and really have a huge visual impact that I think the project needs. And they didn't take too long to put up. I screwed into the cabinets a little bit and into the wooden structure I just put up, and a little bit even into the hood. So they worked quite well. So a big chunk of the time on the project was doing a lot of things I ended up not doing, and I struggled a little bit trying to think of ways to box the wood around the hood in clever ways. And a lot of the stuff I saw, they just did a boxed frame, and then they did everything over this frame, all the new construction over the frame. I kind of didn't have enough room. Like I said before, I didn't want to get rid of the cabinets on the top, and there was really no way I could have boxed it out and did something really nice without compromising accessibility to the cabinets. So I went down the route of just like actually drilling into the actual hood. Now I have to say, you have to know where the electrical is, where the mechanics are, where everything is before you even think of doing something like this. And if you are going to do something like what I just did, I think it's probably safe to mark it out first with like a permanent marker, do some marks of indications of where everything is as far as electrical and mechanical things, so you don't put a screw somewhere. The bottom trim worked beautifully when attaching to the horizontal pieces I put in for the framework. Unfortunately, there was nowhere to attach for the top trim, and unless I want to take out the shelves. So I had to actually attach it to a piece of wood that I had to actually pre-drill before putting the screws in. The top of the hood is much thicker than the bottom, so I had to pre-drill it and then attach the piece of wood and then attach my trim to that. But it worked out beautifully. Everything was fine, and yeah, all was good to go to the next step, which was sanding. I decided to spray paint this hood a copper color and to do tile work on it. Both are huge gambles for me, and we'll see how that holds up. But I did read a lot of articles and different YouTube videos that you can sand stainless steel and then prime it and then use spray paint. So another thing I should have done was I should have done this before installing the hood, but when I decided to go down this route, it was like far too late, so I have to actually spray paint in place, which is definitely not ideal. So we'll see how that goes, and I will have to give an update video on how the tile and the spray paint holds up onto this hood. Someone on TikTok gave me an idea to use a mesh. I guess the only mesh I found was for sheetrock that they were describing, but I decided to get something that was compatible with cement board, which hopefully will work. So it did stick beautifully to the actual stainless steel once I sanded it, and hopefully it'll give like a little bit more structure and something for the tile to stick onto. So we'll see how that goes. I hope I used the right product they were describing. I tried to message someone who gave me this advice, and they didn't receive the message in time, so let's hope. I am not a carpenter, and I had some pretty gruesome mistakes when putting up the trim, especially when I had to do angles. I found it very difficult. But I do have a good recommendation for wood filler that I tend to use all the time for a lot of my projects. And I did a project upstairs where I used some wood filler, and I noticed that the cheaper ones are not great. I recommend only this one. There might be some other stuff available that's okay. I also had to use the Dremel to like knock off little bits where the angles weren't lining up correctly. Again, I have to say, I'm not the best at carpentry. I'm not a carpenter at all. I don't feel comfortable sawing. I don't know why that is, but dremeling, don't have a problem, but actually using like table saws and circular saws, I'm a little bit skittish about. I think I've heard too many stories of people like sawing off fingers, and it just kind of scares me. So for the actual tile, I don't use, when I have to put tile on wood or in this case metal, I like to use liquid nail. A contractor gave me this suggestion a while ago for some of my projects. So I tend to use liquid nail to put on tile on anything that isn't specifically something you usually put tile on, such as wood. And it works beautifully, I have to say. I do a lot of tile jobs, and I find that on wood, liquid nail works perfectly. So hopefully I'll have the same success with this. That said, it's a little bit of a learning curve to understand how much you put on. So at first I put on way too much, and then I had to kind of realize less is sometimes more, and less is not adequate. So you have to get like a happy medium. If you put too much on, you'll find that it the tile droops down and doesn't really stick into place correctly, and sometimes the liquid nail pops up through the grout lines, and if you don't put on enough, of course it falls out. Now if you notice, okay, I am using an old knife. I didn't have the proper tool. I didn't want to go running out, so I find that sometimes whatever, I have a knife that I don't care about, I'm going to use it. It worked perfectly. So shame on me, I guess, for not having the proper tool. But the butter knife was so fine. It was okay. And it was something that was just like, I probably had to throw it anyways. So that is that. And I know I'm probably going to get a judgy comment, but sometimes if you have something that will work, it's much easier to just use that than driving, 40 minutes or 20 minutes or however long it takes, wasting the gas and getting something that you need exactly at Home Depot. So if you watch any of my videos, you'll notice these kind of kinky kind of things that I do, but I apologize. And like I said, this time I put way too much liquid nail, and I had to go back and take some off and readjust the tile, which was kind of annoying. this side, I really nailed it. And it was just enough for the tile to stick properly and not too much where it was kind of taking forever to dry and sliding down. So this is a great reference. So disregard my previous tile liquid nail job. And I didn't use any gauges to put in between the tiles. I forgot what they called. I do apologize. I am not the best tiler, and I don't know. I find that I do a lot of mosaic work, and those things just like get in the way for me. And anyone who's a tile expert is probably going to think I'm a total moron, and I apologize. But that's just not. I find them to be annoying. I don't even know what they're called, but the plastic bits you put in between tile. And usually the ones I usually see are the ones that are shaped like a cross, and they just like won't work properly in this particular application. They'll probably just get in the way. And then I had to spray paint. So I had to go around with big pieces of parchment paper that I bought for another project. I got this for a project I had to get like the correct measurements on for a tile job, actually, in a door. So I used this for that, and so I had some extra, and I had to tape it around before I spray painted it. the spray paint came out looking totally fake. I have such an appreciation for metals, and it kind of irritated me. So I ended up taking a paintbrush and doing kind of I painted a little bit on it to make it look something a little bit different. It still didn't look like metal, but in my opinion, it looked better. And I ended up using the paint around the buttons and stuff. I might so regret doing this, but I can always come back and take it off and then maybe do like a little wooden box around the knobs. I don't know. I just couldn't handle the silver. I'm kind of a weird perfectionist in some ways, and then not in other ways. So I use this caulk. This is a caulk that is a grout caulk, and I love it for the cabinets and I use tiles in between stair risers. And so I'm using this, because a lot of grout, it doesn't take a lot of wear and tear, meaning it's like a stone kind of thing, and it doesn't take movement very well. So like a regular grout wouldn't work so well in a door cabinet or a stair riser, which it's going to be banged all the time and it's going to end up cracking and this and that. But this caulk is like, it just doesn't feel like stone. It's like coming from a place of stone. It's not rigid. It's like basically like rubbery plastic stuff. There is a label, a warning that it's toxic to the touch. So I recommend when you do, I have a process of taking it off where I wear rubber gloves, and then I take it off with paper towels and immediately throw them away. I have to say it's much different than regular grout. I think it's much harder to work with. The application, applying it kind of goes on like cake, like when someone does like designs for cake. It has like a tube, and you can kind of you can caulk it in place. That said, it dries super quick, so you have to kind of rub it in the cracks and then like quickly take it off. And when it dries not like grout, where grout has this like regular grout. Again, it's like a soft kind of pottery kind of feel, very earthy. This it dries like plastic, and if you don't get it all off, it'll like have this plastic film that is kind of obnoxious that you kind of have to take off. So first, like I said, I take my rubber gloves and I just press it into the cracks, and it gives so much structure and support when you do this that I don't think, even if the liquid nail's not holding it, this stuff will probably hold it in place. So I think between the two, it's gonna be fine with holding onto my hood. use paper towels, I make sure the paper towels do not touch my fingers, and I shove it in the cracks for like even further with the paper towels. I make sure it doesn't dry on the wood, and I basically wipe it off in stages. I do immediate wipe, pushing it into the cracks, and then I go over it like 3 or 4 times just to get the film off. And I find that like the first wipe I immediate, then I let it sit for maybe 10 minutes, then another 30 minutes, then maybe an hour. And I find that like this interval wiping with a little bit of breathe time in between is just the perfect way of getting off all the film. Like I said, even if I don't wipe off enough of this, the residue dries, and it's like a plastic film, which is harder to get off the more you let it sit. For the last wipe, as you can see, I wiped twice more. There's a residue. I get it off with a rag or a sponge, something more abrasive. Then I put on this brass bar, which kind of matches the brass bars on the range I bought. That said, these brass bars were made by like an artisan, and the ones that on the range don't seem as great quality, which is interesting. And they have these little hooks where you could put on your copper pans, and it just adds another finishing, it makes it much more homey and utilitarian for the kitchen. The last finishing touches to this project will have to be its own video, but that is the plate wall. I've been collecting these plates for a long time. I use them, I accidentally break them, I buy them broken, and I've been making this like epically wall cover of plate walls around my whole kitchen. I've been doing this for 7 years. It holds up perfectly. It's cleanable, it's totally fine. It's like a normal backsplash, and I'll have to do a whole video on it because it's kind of complex and a little bit different than this hood project. If you're interested, please continue to follow my channel, Do It Yourself Deluxe. I'll be posting the video soon, or when you watch this it might already be up. But it's definitely a fun little project and something that brings, it really complements the hood. Actually, the hood complements it because I needed to have this hood matching my plate wall. That's how kind of insane I am with my plate wall, which kind of dictates what goes in my kitchen. If it doesn't match my plate wall, I don't want it like anywhere near me because it's something that's very dear and near to my heart. So again, please follow the channel and look forward to see more videos. Have a beautiful day.